The storm had passed, but the forest still wept. Rain dripped from broken branches. The ground was littered with leaves and silence. A fragile whimper broke the hush, not from a wolf or deer or anything meant for the wild, but something small, trembling, and out of place. A puppy. Soaked to the bone. Alone. Shivering under the twisted roots of an overturned tree. His name was never known. No collar. No scent of humans. Only hunger and fear. He should have died that night. But he didn't. Because something moved in the darkness, something massive, silent, and wounded in her own way. A shadow stepped forward, a mother bear, drawn not by scent or sound, but something deeper. Something broken in both of them that needed mending. She had lost her cubs weeks before. And yet, when she saw the puppy, small, cold, blinking up at her with wide, tearful eyes, she didn't turn away. She lay down beside him. She shared her warmth. And in that wild, unspoken moment, she chose him. Not to eat. Not to ignore. But to love. This is their story. And it will break you. It began not in the wilderness, but near the edge of a forgotten town tucked between the Cascades, a place where mountains met mist and the pine trees whispered stories no one else could hear. A litter of puppies had been born behind an old mechanic's shed, just beyond the edge of the woods. Their mother, a scruffy golden retriever, had wandered off the highway weeks before and made her nest in an abandoned oil drum. Locals had seen her, skinny, ribs showing, fiercely protective. No one got close. Until one day, she didn't come back. That morning, only one pup remained. The others had disappeared. Taken by predators? Rescued? No one knew. But the smallest of them, the runt, a caramel-colored ball of fluff with a crooked ear and a big heart, stayed close to the shed waiting. He waited for his mother. He waited for warmth. But what came instead was cold, a storm that rolled in from the mountains like a freight train, snapping branches, flooding creeks, and turning dirt paths into rivers. He was swept away. Not far, but far enough. By the time the rain slowed, the puppy had been carried deep into the forest. He tumbled into a thicket, curled beneath roots, and cried until his voice broke. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. His paws were cut. His belly shrunk. And he no longer cried, only whimpered in gasps, his tiny body giving up on sound. Not far from him, a creature stirred. She had been watching since dusk. Her black eyes blinked slowly, locked on the trembling ball of fluff beneath the tree. She was huge, over 400 pounds of rippling muscle and thick matted fur. A grizzly, old and wild, and once a mother. Once. She had given birth to 2 cubs that spring. Tiny, blind things she had nursed with love and fury. They had followed her everywhere, through rivers, berry fields, and even near the distant smell of smoke where humans camped. But then came the fire. It had torn through the low valley with cruel speed. She had run, calling them, searching. One she found, too late. The other was never found. Since then, she wandered. A mother with no cubs. A heart with nowhere to pour its love. And then one night, in the mist and thunder, she saw him. Not a cub. Not her own. But helpless. Alone. Whimpering like the cubs she used to carry in her jaws. She crept closer. The puppy didn't see her at first. His eyes were foggy, his breath thin. But when he smelled her, earth-fur wildness, his tiny body went still. And then, against all logic, he crawled toward her. He didn't bark. Didn't whimper. He simply curled his damp body against her massive paw, and slept. The bear stood frozen. She could have walked away. Left him. Even crushed him. But something in her, something ancient and grieving, responded. She lay down beside him. Pressed her fur against his back. And watched over him through the night. At sunrise, the forest woke up. Birds called. Leaves dripped. And a bear walked slowly through the underbrush, a tiny puppy riding awkwardly on her back, paws gripping fur, ears flopping as she moved. He wasn't heavy. He wasn't a threat. He was family now. The forest had its own rhythm. Each morning came with a hush, a rising chorus of birdsong, and the crackle of life stirring underfoot. But for a while now, it had also come with something new, something the forest hadn't seen before. A bear and a puppy, walking side by side. Or rather, a bear walking confidently, and a clumsy puppy tumbling behind, trying to keep up. She brought him to her den, a hollow between two fallen trees, moss-covered and protected from wind. It was where her cubs once slept. Now it was his. She didn't know what to feed him at first. She pushed berries toward him. He sniffed, sneezed, and turned away. She dug for grubs. He tried to copy her, pawing at the dirt with tiny whines of frustration. Eventually, she brought him scraps from her kills, fish mostly, sometimes the remains of small game. He ate clumsily, noisily, hungrily. She let him climb on her. Let him bite her ears. Let him nap in the curve of her belly. It was not mothering in the human sense. It was protection. It was presence. It was love. He began to mimic her. When she reared up to scratch trees, he'd hop up on his hind legs, flopping over backward. When she pawed the river for fish, he'd splash at the water beside her, barking in frustration when he caught nothing. When she growled at passing coyotes, he tried to growl too, a ridiculous high-pitched yowl that made her huff through her nose like laughter. Still, she showed him. When he failed, she nudged him back up. When he cried, she stood nearby. When he slept, she circled twice, lay down, and placed one paw over him gently. As if to say, "You are safe now." It happened on a foggy morning when the forest was still. They were walking near a river bend, where the rocks were slick and the trees hung low. The puppy, stronger now, more confident, had run ahead, chasing a dragonfly through ferns. That's when they came. Wolves. 3 of them. Lean, gray, hungry. The puppy froze. They growled, low and deliberate. He backed away slowly, tail tucked. Then the growl behind them turned the air to ice. The bear stepped through the fog towering, her fur bristling like thorns. She didn't roar, not yet. She advanced. The lead wolf lunged. She met him mid-air with a thunderous swipe of her paw. The wolf yelped, hit the ground hard, and didn't rise again. The others fled. The puppy ran back to her, barking in a panic. She sniffed him once, then pushed him back gently with her nose. "Stay behind me." That was the message. And from that day on, he did. He grew quickly, stronger legs, sharper senses. He learned to find berries, to avoid snakes, to understand the wind and when it whispered danger. But he also brought something to her life. He made her rest when she would have wandered. He made her play, wrestling, nipping at her nose, tugging at her ears until she rolled onto her back and grumbled in mock defeat. He made her laugh, in the way only bears can. Together, they became a pair the forest remembered. The deer would pause to watch them pass. Ravens cawed and circled overhead, trailing them like curious ghosts. And deep in the shadows of the old-growth woods, hunters whispered of the bear with a dog-shaped shadow. One morning, they stumbled across a trail. Not made by deer or elk, but by humans. Footprints. Crushed grass. Bits of trash left behind. The bear sniffed, stiffened. The puppy barked, not out of joy, but confusion. Something in her changed. She herded him away, nudging, growling low until they were deep into the woods again. Later that night, she sat watching the horizon. A distant glow flickered between the trees, campfire light. She had known humans once. They brought the smoke. They brought the fire. She pressed her muzzle against the pup's head that night and licked him once. A long, slow lick. A mother's gesture. A goodbye waiting in the wings. Time passed like a river, slow at first, then rushing. The puppy, once too small to climb over tree roots, now bounded beside the bear with growing confidence. His legs grew stronger, his bark deeper, and the fluff of his youth gave way to a sleek caramel coat streaked with forest dust and sun. But with time came change. The air grew cooler. The birds flew higher. And the bear began to slow. She was older now, not just in years but in spirit. The fire that had taken her cubs had burned more than trees. It had left smoke in her lungs, stiffness in her limbs, and sorrow too deep for hibernation to wash away. Still, she moved. For him. She hunted when she didn't want to. Fought when her body ached. Trudged through snowmelt and storm so that he could grow in safety. But some mornings, she didn't rise. She lay beneath the leaning pine, breathing slow, eyes half open. He would nuzzle her, whine softly, then curl up beside her until warmth brought her back. He didn't understand yet. But he knew. Something was changing. By now, The puppy had learned how to find food. He could follow a scent trail, dig out beetles, scare off birds, and even fish, though never as gracefully as her. He had become something in between worlds. Not wild like her. Not domestic like the dogs he saw in distant human camps. He was something new. And as his strength grew, so did his curiosity. He would wander ahead now, just a little. Sniff the wind. Bark at deer. Chase shadows between trees. But he always returned. Until the day he didn't. It wasn't intentional. He had followed the scent of smoke, curious, drawn by something familiar. It led him through the pines, across a small stream, and into a clearing where tents stood in a neat line. Campers. He watched from the shadows. The sounds were loud, laughter, clinking pans, music from a phone. It was both alien and familiar, buried in his bones. Then he saw dogs. 2 of them. Leashed. Wagging tails. Well-fed and clean. They barked. He barked back. They whined, excited. A boy turned and saw him. "Hey, there's a dog out there." Voices rose. Someone tried to approach. The puppy panicked and bolted. When he returned to the den, breathless and shaken, she was gone. He barked. Circled. Howled. No scent. No tracks. Nothing. Hours passed. Then night. Then morning again. When she finally returned, her fur was wet, streaked with brambles. One paw dragged slightly behind her. She had been searching for him. The moment she saw him, she let out a sound he had never heard before, a deep guttural breath that wasn't a growl or sigh. It was relief. Pain. Anger. She nudged him hard with her head, knocking him sideways. Then she pulled him close. That night, he didn't leave her side. He curled tighter than he had in months, pressed to her ribcage, ears alert for every sound. And for the first time, he whimpered not from fear, but from guilt. She didn't move. But her paw rested over his back, a silent forgiveness. The days blurred again. The world became quieter. Cooler. Birds vanished. Leaves turned. And the bear slowed more each week. There were fewer play fights. Fewer hunts. More naps. More watching the sky. The pup, now no longer a pup but not quite a dog, took over. He brought food. Stood guard. Watched her sleep. Until, one cold morning, she didn't rise. He barked. Nudged. Waited. She finally opened her eyes, and blinked slowly. Then with great effort, she licked his face once, and lay still again. That day, he didn't leave her side. Not even when snow began to fall. The forest was no longer green. It was white. Blanketed in silence. Every tree was coated in frost. Every sound was muffled. The world had slowed to a crawl, and for most creatures, it was a season of retreat, of hiding away in dens, sleeping through the cold. But not them. Not the bear. Not her adopted pup. They stayed above ground. Because she couldn't sleep anymore, not the deep kind, not the hibernation she once slipped into when her cubs were alive. Her body was weakening. And so, the pup stayed awake with her. Every night, curled beside her. Every day foraging, bringing scraps, digging beneath snow, staying alert to every rustle of branches. He would not let her die alone. He found it during one of his longer searches, an old hunter's shack, deep in the woods. The roof had caved in on one side, but the fireplace remained intact. The windows were gone, but it was dry inside, and less cruel than the wind outside. He returned to her and barked. Nudged. Whined. She was too tired to follow. So he did something he hadn't done since he was a puppy. He bit into her fur, not to hurt, but to pull. He dragged her. Inches at a time. Over frozen ground. One paw over another. She helped, barely. By nightfall, she lay curled in the corner of the shack, eyes half closed, body trembling. And he lay in front of her. Guarding. There was a miracle in that old shack. A stack of damp firewood. And a flint kit left behind by a hunter long gone. He didn't know how to use it, but he remembered. The smell of fire from the human camps. The sound of crackling logs. And somehow, with frozen paws and frantic movement, he knocked the flint together until a spark caught. It lit the hay. The wood flamed. And the shack filled with warmth. She opened her eyes for the first time in hours and let out a low, broken sound. A thank you. He curled beside her again, head resting on her side. And for a few hours, they were safe. Together. That night, he dreamt of spring. Of running through meadows. Of chasing her shadow through the pines. He dreamt of her rolling onto her back, swatting at the sky, her deep rumble of joy shaking the earth. And in the dream, she was whole again. Dawn came slow. Light crept through the broken roof and across the floor. He woke up to silence. No breath. No rise and fall of her chest. No sound but wind. She was still, her face peaceful, her massive form curled like she was still protecting him. But she was gone. Not loudly. Not like a human would. He lay there with her, resting his head beneath her paw, like he always had. And he stayed that way. All day. All night. Until the cold came again, and he knew he had to go. It took him 3 days. Using claws, teeth, strength he didn't know he had, he dug beneath the snow and frozen dirt behind the shack. He made a bed of moss and pine. And he dragged her, slowly, gently, and placed her there. He didn't cover her completely. He left her face exposed to the sky, so that the stars would know she had lived. After that, he wandered. Not aimlessly. He moved with purpose. Sometimes seen near campsites, watching silently from the edge of the woods. Sometimes walking long forest paths, alone but unafraid. He avoided towns, but always returned to the shack once a month, curling up beside her grave. He carried her memory like a color no one could see. And the forest began to whisper about him. The dog raised by a bear. The cub who wasn't a cub. Months passed. Winter melted into spring, and with it came the slow stirring of the world. Creeks filled. Flowers pushed through frost. Birds returned. And the dog, no longer a puppy, no longer a cub, began to change too. His eyes held depth now. His gait was confident but cautious. He was a creature of two worlds, born near humans, raised by the wild. And he walked alone. But one morning, while drinking from a stream near the far edge of the valley, he heard a cry. Not a bird. Not a wolf. A human. She was young, no more than 10, and had slipped down a rocky slope while hiking with her family. She had twisted her ankle badly and couldn't climb back up. She sat sobbing on a ledge, calling out, her voice thin in the trees. He watched from the underbrush. Something in him stirred, the part the bear had nurtured. The part that responded to helplessness. He crept forward, slowly, paused silent on the moss. She looked up, saw him, and froze. He looked nothing like a pet. His fur was wild. His eyes deep. His muscles lean from living off the land. But he didn't growl. He didn't bark. He simply stepped closer, sniffed her ankle, and then did something she never expected. He lay down beside her. Protective. Still. Warm. And then, he howled. A long, echoing call, rising through the valley like a signal. It carried. 30 minutes later, voices called from above. Lily. Down here. Her parents found her, curled beside a strange wild dog with golden fur and forest eyes. He didn't flee when they approached. He simply stood, watched them lift the girl, then turned and disappeared into the trees without a sound. But they never forgot him. And neither did she. 3 days later, he returned to the edge of town. He didn't know why. Perhaps it was the girl. Perhaps it was time. He sat outside a gas station, watching cars roll by. A man offered him jerky. He took it. A woman tried to leash him. He growled gently and walked away. Then came the girl, Lily, and her parents. They knelt. Whispered. Held out hands. She showed him something, a scarf with a faint scent of the woods. He came to her. Slowly. And when she hugged him, pressing her face into his fur, he didn't pull away. He followed her home. It was strange at first. The walls. The lights. The bowl with his name etched into it, Willow, the girl had decided, in honor of the forest. He didn't understand beds. Didn't like mirrors. But he stayed. Because every night when the world went quiet, she would curl up beside him on the rug, and he would dream of pine needles, of riverbanks, of warmth that smelled like fur and wildflowers. He dreamed of her. The bear. The mother. the one who had saved him. Each year on the first snowfall, Willow, now fully grown, loyal, calm, and strong, would sit at the edge of the forest. And the girl, now a young woman, would walk beside him. They would carry a small bundle of pine, honey, and berries. They would hike for hours to the shack. And there, beside the moss-covered mound, they would sit in silence. She never asked who the grave belonged to. But she knew. Because when Willow lay down beside it, eyes closed, and let out a soft, long sigh, it told her everything. He grew old with the girl. He became her shadow. Her guardian. Her reminder that the world still held magic. She told his story to children. She wrote it in journals. And one day, when she bought land near the forest, she built a wildlife sanctuary. At the entrance stood a wooden statue, not of a man or a hero, but of a bear and a puppy, curled together beneath a tree. A bronze plaque read, "She didn't just save him. She raised him." And he never forgot. The land, once silent, now buzzed with life. Lily's sanctuary had blossomed into something beautiful, a place for healing, not just for animals, but for people too. Injured deer, orphan foxes, owls with damaged wings, and rescued farm animals all found shelter here. But at the center of it all was Willow. Now graying around his muzzle, slower on his paws, but still mighty. Children would gather to hear his story. Volunteers cared for him like royalty. He would walk the trails calmly, sometimes stopping before the wooden statue of the bear and puppy, as if remembering, as if listening. And then one day, something stirred in the woods again. A storm had just passed, a violent one that left branches shattered and rivers flooded. Lily was checking the fences when she heard it. A cry. Not quite a growl. Not quite a whimper. She followed the sound for over a mile into the forest until she saw it, a tiny bear cub, no older than a few weeks, drenched and muddy, clinging to a fallen log. No mother in sight. Its eyes were swollen, scared, but locked onto her. She reached for her radio. Called the team. The cub didn't run. It stepped toward her. And behind her, Willow had arrived, slower than before, but there. He sniffed the air. Watched the cub. Then, sat down beside Lily. They named the cub Juniper. She was small, vocal, and fiercely attached to Willow, as if sensing he was different, safe. Though he was a dog, she followed him like a brother. She mimicked his walk. She slept with her face buried in his fur. She even growled when anyone tried to take him away. Lily watched in awe. She had seen this before. History was repeating itself, not in tragedy, but in restoration. As Juniper grew, Willow became her guide. He showed her how to find berries in the fenced woods, how to dig into logs for insects, how to chase butterflies without getting stung. They would wrestle, gently. He let her tug on his tail. And in the quietest moments, they would both lay beneath the statue of the bear, the one who had saved him, as if telling her the story without words. Juniper was learning not just how to be a bear, but how to be loved. By now, Willow was moving slower. He slept more. Watched more. Juniper, still young and wild, didn't seem to notice. She played around him, with him, on him. But Lily noticed. One day, Willow didn't rise from his nap. Lily knelt beside him and felt the soft rhythm of his breath. His eyes opened, old, wise, and calm. And she whispered, "It's okay. I'll tell her the rest of the story." That evening, as stars blinked awake, Willow passed away under a cedar tree, surrounded by the wind, the woods, and the little bear curled beside him. Juniper didn't cry. She simply pressed her forehead against his chest and stayed that way until morning. Lily buried him beside the statue, beneath the paw of the carved bear, and added a second plaque. He loved like a bear. And he left the forest better than he found it. Juniper grew fast. What started as a clumsy cub who chewed on boots and tripped over rocks became a powerful young bear with sleek fur, sharp instincts, and a wild gleam in her eyes. But she was different, not just in how she moved, but in how she trusted. She didn't fear humans the way most wild bears did. She knew kindness, because Willow had shown her that it could live in both fur and skin. And Lily? Lily had become her tether. Her bridge to safety. Her second mother. Each morning, Juniper would visit the base of the statue, the carved image of the bear and the puppy that had once been her protectors. Sometimes she'd lie there quietly. Sometimes she'd rest her paw against the wood. And sometimes she'd stare at the trees, as if expecting them to part and bring someone home. Lily watched it all, heart full and aching. The sanctuary had now become a living tribute to all three of them. The mother bear who lost everything but gave everything. The pup who crossed the wild to become more than a dog. And now Juniper, the next chapter. It happened one bright spring morning. Lily came to Juniper's pen with breakfast, fresh fruit and a bucket of honey water. But Juniper didn't come. She stood near the gate, staring, beyond it, toward the forest. She'd been pacing more lately, climbing trees, splashing in the stream. Something inside her was stirring, something wild. Lily placed the bucket down, knelt, and opened the gate. No fences this time. No goodbye. Just a whisper, "Go when you're ready." Juniper turned, walked to Lily, pressed her massive head against her chest, and then stepped into the trees. For weeks, she was gone. No tracking collar, no leash. Just a single bear roaming the lands her kind had walked for thousands of years. But she wasn't lost. She was becoming who she was always meant to be. Hunting, foraging, roaring. She even found other bears, from a distance, curious. She never stayed long. But she watched. She learned. And in one quiet valley, near a grove of wild raspberries, she gave birth to 2 cubs. They were tiny, blind, helpless. But she was ready. She had been shown what love looked like, even when it came in strange forms, a dog with a bear's soul. She cradled them, fed them, protected them. And one morning, while they napped under the sun, she did something no one could explain. She walked, alone, through the forest, down the winding hills, and returned. It was dawn when the cameras at the sanctuary picked her up. Juniper, larger, wiser, calmer, walked into the clearing. Behind her, 2 cubs toddled and tumbled, their eyes wide with curiosity. She didn't break anything. She didn't roar. She led them to the statue. To them. The bear. The dog. The story. She sat beside it. The cubs pawed at the base, sniffing, climbing. Lily, who had been watching from the edge, stood frozen, tears falling. Juniper glanced back at her once. A moment. A thank you. Then she turned, and led her cubs back into the trees. That was the last time Lily saw her. But she didn't worry. Because Juniper had become part of the wild now. Part of the legacy. And the statue remained, visited by hikers, children and animals alike, a silent monument to an impossible bond. A wild bear. A lost puppy. And the love that changed both their lives, and the lives of those who followed. Lily sat in her small wooden office at the sanctuary, sunlight streaming through the window, a steaming mug beside her, and a worn notebook open on the desk. Inside were pages of memories. The fire that stole the mother bear's cubs. The puppy she saved. The bond that defied nature. It had been 15 years since the bear passed. 10 since Willow, the dog with the wild heart, left the world in peace. And 5 since Juniper returned briefly to show her own cubs the place that shaped her. Lily had written it all down, not to be remembered herself, but so others would know that compassion wasn't only human. Outside, a school bus arrived. Dozens of kids spilled out, chatting, pointing, laughing. One boy, quiet and thoughtful, clutched a notebook with a bear sticker on it. Lily walked out to greet them. He looked up at the statue and whispered, "That's her, right? The bear who saved the puppy." Lily nodded. She raised him like her own. "And he never forgot," the boy said, smiling. "I read about it online." My mom cried. The sanctuary had changed over the years. Now, it wasn't just for animals. It was a learning ground. A place where humans came to reconnect, with nature, with empathy, with stories. And always, always Willow and the bear were there, carved in wood, remembered in hearts. People left notes at the base of the statue. "You helped me believe again. This story saved my life. I will never forget you." Emails came in from across the globe. From a teacher in Japan, my students wrote poems about the bear and the puppy. We cried together in class. From a mother in Brazil, my son asked if he can be brave like the puppy one day. I told him yes, if he learns to love like the bear. From a filmmaker in Canada, I want to make a movie based on their story. It deserves the world. Lily replied to them all. With one line she'd come to believe with all her heart. Some stories are too true to be fiction, and too beautiful to fade. A documentary was filmed, The Wild Bond, narrated by a famous voice actor, featuring reenactments, interviews, and drone footage of the sanctuary and forest. It aired on national television. Millions watched. Many cried. And donations flooded in. The sanctuary expanded. Dozens of new animals were rescued. A second statue was carved, this time of Juniper and her 2 cubs, standing proud beside the original bear and dog. The forest had birthed a legend. At a university lecture one year, a zoologist discussed unusual animal behavior. He showed photos of the bear and the dog. "How do we explain this?" he asked. "A wild predator caring for a domestic species, not eating it, not rejecting it, but raising it?" The room was silent. Then one student stood and said, "We don't need to explain it. We just need to learn from it." Years later, with silver in her hair and strength in her voice, Lily sat beneath the statue and wrote one final note. She left it tucked in a tin box beneath the paws. It read, "To the bear who gave everything. To the puppy who became legend. To the wild that never forgot love. You taught me that motherhood has no shape. That kindness leaves a trail. And that family is not about blood, it's about choosing each other. I see you in every sunrise. I hear you in the wind through the trees. Thank you, my friends. Lily." One spring evening, after Lily passed peacefully in her sleep, something strange happened. A young bear was spotted wandering near the sanctuary, sniffing, curious, slow to run. She came alone. Then lay beneath the statue. As the sky turned purple and the stars opened above her, she closed her eyes, and stayed. As if returning home. Final message. The wild remembers. Love leaves a scent no storm can wash away. And those who choose each other, across fur, fear, and fate, live forever in the stories we tell.